This episode is sponsored by a company who has truly found a solution to an age-old problem, and that is Karna bunker gear. One of the most prevalent conversations in the fire service is should we or should we not train in our bunker gear? Now, the answer to both is yes. As most of us are aware, the carcinogens from structure fires, of which there are over 260 that are dangerous to human health, not to mention the PFAS and other chemicals that are within our gear from the manufacturing process, are factors that we obviously want to minimize. Now, the other side of the coin is that we do need to train in our gear. There is no way to acclimatize the heat retention and lack of mobility than to actually wear the gear. So seeing this problem himself, firefighter and exercise physiologist Ryan Conley developed a carcinogen-free gear at a much lower cost that can be used in non-IDLH atmosphere and training that does not require puncture or tear resistance. Now, as someone who always trained in gear myself throughout my career, I wish this technology was around then. And I got to test it personally while coaching my tactical athlete class a few weeks ago, and can testify that it not only simulates the heat retention of frontline gear, but also the lack of mobility, which is imperative at operating at a high level on the fireground. Now, some additional benefits include being able to doff the gear when you do get banged out for a call, increasing the lifespan of your frontline bunker gear, and then also public education. Think of the number of times that we allow, for example, school children to wear our gear when it's infused with all these carcinogens. So there are so many real-world applications for a fraction of the cost of IDLH-rated bunker gear. So if you want to hear the whole story behind this, listen to my conversation with Ryan Conley on episode 1175 of the Behind the Shield podcast, or go to karnabunkergear.com. Welcome to the Behind the Shield podcast. As always, my name's James Gearing, and this week it is my absolute honor to welcome on the show U.S. Marine turned comedian Michael D'Angelo. Now, in this conversation, we discuss a host of topics, from his turbulent upbringing, his journey into the military, the travel that opened his mind, his transition out, finding the world of comedy, the rapid fire comedy tour, and so much more. Now, before we get to this incredible conversation, as I say every week, please take a moment. Go to whichever app you listen to this on, subscribe to the show, leave feedback, and leave a rating. Every single 5-star rating truly does elevate this podcast, therefore making it easier for others to find. And this is a free library of almost 1,200 episodes now. So all I ask in return is that you help share these incredible men and women's stories so I can get them to every single person on planet Earth who needs to hear them. So with that being said, I introduce to you Michael D'Angelo. Enjoy. Well, Michael, I want to start by saying thank you so much for taking the time and coming on the Behind the Shield podcast today.
Thanks for having me, James.
So where on planet Earth are we finding you this afternoon?
I'm sitting in my apartment in East Los Angeles.
Beautiful. Let's start at the very beginning of your timeline then. So tell me where you were born and tell me a little bit about your family dynamic, what your parents did, how many siblings.
I was born in Las Vegas. I have one sister, she's my half-sister. We got different dads. And my dad worked construction. My mom was kind of a chaotic person, but she did like hair and nails, and she was a massage therapist and stuff like that. But mainly she did heroin.
So we'll jump straight into it. Now in 2026, where a lot of us are having a more educated conversation on mental health, and we realize that there is a generational trauma to a lot of the suffering that's going on today. When you reflect back, as far as your mother's upbringing, do you think contributed to her struggle with addiction?
Oh, fuck. I couldn't say exactly what might have happened to her, but I know that she was doing drugs for a long time. She was doing like heroin since she was like 15 years old or something like that. She was That was back in like, I don't know, the 70s, or the like early 70s. So it's a different time, whether it was her own family dynamic and the way her parents raised her, or just the social environment she found herself in, or something like that. Yeah, she was experimenting and doing crazy shit in an era where that stuff was a little more. I don't know. There were less options. Like there were no podcasts, right? There was no Instagram. There's a lot less shit to keep yourself entertained, and I think that era, the '70s, I think drugs and rock and roll were a little more like. I mean, the people pushed back on it for sure, but I think it was a little more normal to experiment with that kind of stuff, and I don't know how that informed her adulthood, except that she continued to do drugs and she was a crazy person.
So talk to me about that dynamic then as a young boy. What were, as you reflect back now, the kind of highs and the lows of the upbringing that you had?
I mean, the highs were very far and few between. By the time I was born, my dad was kind of losing everything because he was battling with her, and they were doing drugs together. And the lows were super low because she was, struggling with this drug addiction and divorcing my dad and chaos. So she was in and out of my life as a kid a lot. And by the time I was like old enough to be like aware of, what was going on, which was still at a pretty young age, she was basically not a mother figure at all.
What about sports, exercise? What were you playing and doing in the school age?
As a little kid, I was in like karate, I played soccer, stuff like that. Mainly like a big bike rider. I was one of those kids out in the streets riding the bike everywhere, but I didn't get into like football or basketball. And by the time I was old enough to like really play sports, I was out in the streets running around being crazy, running from the cops and shit like that.
And what was the environment that you grew up in? As far as you mentioned Vegas, was it what kind of neighborhood were you in at that point?
So that's another part of it is I went to a different school every year from like kindergarten all the way up through high school. So moved a lot of different neighborhoods. People are always like, "Oh, what part of Vegas you from?" And I basically spent a little bit of time everywhere. East Vegas, West Vegas, Central, North Vegas, South, all over. Really, I spent a lot of time moving and going to different schools and connecting with different street kids from all over the city.
I asked this question to people that were like military brats, for example, that moved all over the world, or they just had gypsy parents, or in your case, obviously, a kind of similar dynamic. What were the pros and what were the cons of constantly being moved around?
Well, the cons were definitely, instability, uncertainty, harder to find like a safety. And that wasn't just from moving. The home life was crazy. It was hard to find like a comfortable like place to be in general. We lived with a lot of different people, and it was very where we sleeping tonight sort of a thing. The pros, I don't know, as an adult I think I have like a a perspective on stress and instability and uncertainty that gives me a comfortability in those environments now, where it's like, like as an adult, it's much easier because I do actually have control over my own life. And, I have like a comfortable, safe place to be. So no matter what the world throws at me, I can kind of like come back to my own center and my own home, things like that. So it gave me like a grit, and just a perspective of like how things can really be, what it's really like to not have control, and what's really like to have uncertainty.
What about comedy? There's a lot of people that come on, myself included, that used comedy to offset ultimately bullying, trauma, all these different areas. Were you leaning into that back then, or was that something that developed later in life?
So when I was a little kid, I was writing a lot. I was always writing like short stories and stuff. Not particularly comedy, but I was definitely like, my imagination would like come out on the page. It was kind of like a a place for me to have that outlet. Comedy specifically, because I grew up mainly, my dad raised me. I spent a lot of time with him in environments that are very adult, whether it was bars or construction sites or just hanging out with him and his friends. And I picked up on like bar jokes and things like that very fast. One thing that was always fun was, being around a group of adults and they'd be like telling their like bar jokes and stuff. And I'd be like, I got one. And they'd be like, oh shit, what's this kid going to say? And then I'd lay one on them and they'd all start laughing. They'd be like, where'd you hear that? Like, I picked it up. So at a young age, yeah, I was like telling jokes, hanging around adults, talking about adult shit. And then as I got older, like into like middle school and high school, it became this like kind of like a shit talking, I guess, because it was less of like joke telling and more of like being able to deliver the right timing, just something's going on, you're with your friends, and that you put in your 2 cents at the right time, and you kind of break tension or just say that thing. Everybody's like, holy shit, what'd he say? It was less, people call it like shock humor. It wasn't so much shock humor. It was just like, I call it timing. Sometimes you're just in a place, in an environment where people are talking and there's just an opening, an opportunity. They set you up, and I was getting really good as a kid to be able to see those little moments to insert here.
I remember being called a sniper when I was younger because I wasn't very talkative, but kind of like you, before my brain could even tell me to shut the fuck up and not say the thing, my mouth would already say it. And, it would be funny, I'm assuming. But what was interesting is I was also very good at making fun of myself. And I think that when you can get that kind of level as far as, making fun of yourself, it dissuaded people, bullying, because they were like, well, shit, if he can be so brutal on himself, what's he going to be like with us? So I almost found like having a smart mouth is almost a deterrent sometimes for bullying, if that makes sense.
Definitely.
What about career aspirations? What were you dreaming of becoming when you were in the school ages?
Oh man, when I was in school ages, all I knew is that I wanted to work and I wanted to make money and have a job and like, have a financial security that I was not finding as a kid. But as far as what I wanted to do, I didn't know. I was like, the first thing I can like remember even like entertaining as a kid was that movie Armageddon came out and being like, oh man, the money's good, the scenery changes, and they let you play with explosives. Dude, I want to work on an oil rig, shit like that. But it was never like, I'm going to do this, I'm going to be this. It was more of like, it was more of like, I just want to like make money and find like a financial stability. And I didn't really know what that looked like except, just like getting a job. And maybe I assumed maybe I was going to end up doing construction like my dad. And it kind of started to go that way. I worked with my dad on job sites from like a very young age. And when I was like finally old enough to like work legally on the books, I went out and like got my first job at like a pizza place and, saved every check, bought my first car and started to gain that independence and have that like financial sense of like control.
There is a common acknowledged statistic now that the ACE score, which is the Adverse Childhood Experience score, a lot of us in uniform, first responder, military, have a ACE of 6 out of 10, which is quite a lot of shit when you were younger. And there's an acknowledged principle that a lot of us that did feel trauma when we were younger, maybe didn't have stability, didn't feel safe, didn't feel loved, etc., then were drawn into a profession where they could be the protector. They could be part of a tribe. They could have a mission that made the world a little bit better. One thing, though, I think that takes someone from the crossroads of either a positive role, positive road like that, versus in prison, dead, etc., is a positive mentor in their life. If your mentor is a gangbanger on the corner, you may not be, following a good path. If your mentor happens to be someone else, it might steer you towards military, first responder, or a better road. When you look back, it sounds like you had a good relationship with your dad. Were there any other mentors that were maybe filling some of those voids that you needed?
Honestly, no. And that's kind of where, not necessarily like the gangbanger on the street, but because my home life was so unstable, I wasn't at home a lot. And I found this like brotherhood, this camaraderie running the streets with these other wild kids. And not to say that I was looking up to any of them. That certainly was not the case. I was very aware that like we were all a bunch of shitheads. There was no leader. There was no mentor at all. Um, but I was searching for like a community. I was searching for like camaraderie and a brotherhood for sure, running around out in the streets, and I found it. That's for sure. You know, it definitely gave me um, a place to like connect and feel, uh, a closeness to people that I just wasn't getting at home, I guess.
So, how did you find yourself walking through the doors of a recruiting office?
Well, the being the kid out in the street running wild, it started to shit started to add up, and for me it was I wasn't I was a shit talker and I liked adrenaline and I like to hang out with all these guys and have fun, but I was never like a fighter. I was never, I never sold drugs. I never carried guns, none of that shit. I stole from like the grocery store and shit. Like my friends were like stealing cars and crazy shit and selling hard drugs and, getting into like really scary stuff. And I just happened to be around them when it would happen. And it just, started getting out of hand. It all escalated. We went from like being kids fighting each other to like fighting adults in the street. And now these guys, we're getting shot at, and when I was 16, a friend of mine was getting jumped and I ran out there to go help him and someone sliced my face open with a straight razor. And it was about that year within that time period that I was like, I got to get out of here. Like my friends are going to jail. They're going to prison. Friends are getting shot. I got my face sliced open. If I don't get out of here, I'm going to end up dead or in prison. Like I gotta make a move. I have to leave. And so in the middle of my junior year, I went to my like, they let us out for winter break and I went to the front office and I got my transcripts and I went to a community college and I took my GED and I got the GED and I went to the Navy office and I was like, yeah, I want to be a SEAL, and they were like, we're not taking GEDs right now. And I was like, well, shit. Okay, so the Marine Corps office right next door. So I went there and they were like, we'll work with you. We got a plan for you. And I signed up to join. And yeah, that was I was in such an eager rush to join that my recruiter like fucked me real good. He got me so good. I was basically telling him, I was like, yeah, man, like, cause I got my original date was like September 2008. I was like, yeah, man, if someone drops out of their program or, their contract, I'll go early. Like if something opens up early, I want to go. I want to get out of here. He was like, all right, yeah, I'll let you know. And then something opened up. Basically, someone dropped out and he was like, hey, we got a spot. You'll leave about a month early. I was like, perfect, let's go. He goes, but you're going to have to change your MOS from, I was like a motor T to like a infantry. And I was like, all right, sweet. That'll work. I'll be a machine gunner. He was like, and you're going to lose your sign-on bonus. I was like, all right, whatever. He goes, and you got to be reserve. And I was like, what's that? He goes, well, basically you go to boot camp, then you go to machine gunner school, and then you'll come home and check in at Nellis Air Force Base. And I was like, no. I don't want to be back in Las Vegas. The whole goal is to get out. He goes, oh, don't worry about it. When you check with your unit, you can put in your paperwork to like activate and and you can join another unit and you won't have to be here. And the unit that you check in with is going to Iraq in March. So if you don't get held back or recycled in all your training, you'll be able to go to Iraq with them. You can put your paperwork in for active duty before you leave. And then when you come back, you'll be active, blah, blah, blah. And I was like, oh, sure, that sounds great, Mr. Recruiter. Yeah, absolutely. So I join, and then I get out of machine gunner school. I check in with my unit, and I'm like, yeah, I want to go active duty. And they're like, or first I'm like, okay, we're going to Iraq, right? And they're like, no, they started their work up in November, dude. You're not going to Iraq with them. And I was like, okay, fuck, all right. Well, I want to put in my paperwork to go active duty. And they go, no, you can't do that. I go, why not? My recruiter said. They go, oh yeah, did your recruiter tell you that? Well, you have a billet here. You're filling this billet. You can't. You're not going active. That's not what you're doing here. You're filling a billet. And I had kind of like a moment. I was like, oh fuck this. I'm not staying here in Las Vegas. You guys, someone lied to me. This is bullshit. I'm gonna figure out a way out of here. And because I was standing in this office with all the the people, all the leadership told me this, I was like, okay, what do I do now? And I'm just like this young Marine that doesn't know a whole lot. So I was like, I'm gonna write a letter to my senator. And I wrote a letter to the senator. I was like, hey, Harry Reid, I want to this is my situation. They told me this, but this is what they're telling me now. And, you know, I'm young, I'm able bodied. I just got a machine gunner school. I'd like to go active. I want to blah, blah, blah. Thinking that I was going to get like orders in the mail. They were going to be like, yeah, here you go. Problem solved. No, he called headquarters Marine Corps like, hey, we got a Marine saying he's being treated unfairly. And they brought me in and ripped me a fucking new one. And they were like, who told you you couldn't? All the same people that told me I couldn't, because technically they fucked up. They should have let me submit my paperwork. They could have denied it or lost it, but they couldn't. They should have told me like, no, you can't submit. And I was like, oh, you guys did. You told me no. You were all standing here. She said, you said what? You know, what the fuck are you talking about? And it clicked. I was like, oh, this is what it's gonna be. You guys are gonna fucking lie and bullshit me. All right, good to go. Then I'll fucking, you fuck me, I'll fuck back. And that was kind of like the beginning of my career with the Marine Corps.
I've had only one recruitment story, and I'm bearing in mind I got 1,200 episodes now, pretty much, where the person got what they want, and that was Pat McNamara, Delta, and he took his dad sent his lawyer friend with him to the recruitment office, and he actually got the MOS that he requested. I think that's the single positive recruitment story I've had where the person got exactly what they were hoping to get from the beginning. So,
wow, that's a fucking rarity.
Exactly. We'll take a lawyer. There we go. So you're in reserve status. Walk me through then, you know, how that unfolds to you know, where you ended up deploying.
So, you know, I check in with this unit, and right away, like, I piss them off, and I get to end up going to, we do some annual training. I go to Bridgeport. It's great. I kind of get that level of training that I've been looking for, you know, the getting to, you know, get like good Marine Corps skills and shit, and I thrive. And then the next time I get to go out, I go to Central America, go to Belize, and I'm in the jungle getting this like really awesome training again. So like my cup is getting filled. I'm like, oh man, this is what I wanted. This is the kind of stuff I wanted to be doing. And then, you know, at this point, I had like submitted for schools. I wanted to like go to marksmanship school. I wanted to go back to machine gun leaders course. And because I had pissed off the leadership, they kept like fucking up my paperwork or coming up with bullshit excuses about like, oh, like a week before I'm supposed to go to some school. They're like, oh, sorry, your blood work didn't get done. And even the corpsman's like, what the fuck are these guys talking about? Blood, like you don't have to, your blood work, you don't have to do anything. Like these guys are making shit up. Finally, a deployment comes up to go to Southeast Asia, and I go to, basically I get to go to Southeast Asia. We start out in Japan. We're in Japan for a little bit, and then we jump on a ship and island hop down Thailand, Singapore, Indonesia, Malaysia, Korea, and it was amazing. It was beautiful. It was my like first time like on a ship like that, and we're also doing like real marine shit too. We're not like in the fucking mountains of the desert. Like we're doing beach raids. Every country that we're at, our ship stops off the coast. We jump on the AAVs, we push up, and we come onto the beach. We raid up into the jungle, and it's fucking amazing. It was cool as shit. And at this point, I had developed a real knack with my mouth to like piss off all the shitty people, because I had become like, I was so like obsessed with like being good and like being like a good Marine and trying to like be, you know, the best, be in the best shape I could, learn all the knowledge I needed to learn, that being in the reserves, there's so many shitheads that it's easy to do really well and be like a stud, you know? So I was mad at the leadership, and any opportunity I had to like call them out or just be a smart ass or, you know, shit like that, I would. And by the time I got on this deployment, I was like so good at like picking out weakness in the command and people that were making mistakes that it earned me a lot of attention. It was interesting is it earned me a lot of attention with like really good Marines, like guys that were fucking like fleet Marines that were good dudes. Cause they didn't, they, you know, they get in the reserves on their way out and they realize like, oh yeah, look at all these fucking pieces of shit. And they'd meet me and they go, dude, you're good shit. Like you'd have been great in the fleet. You're not fucked up. Like these guys are fucked up. So like the right people liked me, but then all the shitheads hated me because I was just constantly like pointing out their flaws and you know, picking apart all the bad decisions and the mistakes they were making that were like fucking with our quality of life and shit. And that deployment was kind of like a real double-edged sword, because I connected with a lot of really good guys and got to do a lot of really cool shit. And even though like the landing force commander became my friend. but all the people that were making mistakes kind of like they all got put in the spotlight because on this deployment it's just a lot more moving parts. So if you're an idiot and you don't know what you're doing, like it's going to show. You're going to fuck up, and it became that. And it was a lot of me going, "See, told you. Look at these fucking idiots." You know what I mean?
What about the stability of the military when you went through, and then also obviously the kind of education a lot of us get when we travel and see other cultures, you see the kind of shared humanity more often than not. What did that structure and stability and purpose and tribe do for you that was kind of lacking prior to the military?
Um, the structure was great because I craved like some structure. My life was so chaotic, so the structure was awesome. But if there's one thing I can say about the military, there is so much chaos, and at least in the group that I was in, there's so much mistakes happening that you're like, sometimes you look around and you go, how the fuck do we win wars? Like, how you guys, this is all fucked up. So there was a lot of like really looking into the machine that is the military industrial complex and being like, yo, this is how this shit is run. And it gave me like it makes you frustrated as someone who craves like control and structure and problem solving, when it's like the the leadership and the people in charge don't have their shit together. They're disorganized for whatever reason, and it makes you bitter. It makes you upset. You're like, first of all, this is the guy that's in charge. Second, like, look at all this suffering and excess time wasted and bullshit because these people don't know what the fuck they're doing and they suck at their jobs. So there was like that. But when I joined, I definitely got like a stability because my home life was so unstable. And I went to boot camp, and it was the first time I got 3 meals a day for like a consistency like that. It was the first time I slept in a bed every night for 8 hours. There was a sense of stability. And there's a lot of like, because I was growing up so stressed, like a lot of the stress and training is like, it's all manufactured, particularly the mental stuff. The Marine Corps is big on that mental shit. It's very manufactured. And I had a hard time like taking it seriously when I first joined, because I was like, this is like, it's a fucking joke. They're doing this to stress us out. Like this isn't a real situation. Um, but it still gave me like a stability, whether it comes from like, wearing camis every day, like your uniform's the same. You're gonna have breakfast, you're gonna have lunch, you're gonna have dinner. There's a schedule, there's a routine. Like it gives you like a comfort in knowing what to expect, which I did not have before I joined.
There are so many countries that do certain areas really well, that if every country had the humility to learn from other countries, the rising tide would lift all ships. All countries around the world would benefit from this education system and this healthcare system, et cetera, et cetera. As you progress through Southeast Asia, were there any elements at all of some of these other cultures that made you think, oh, that would actually work really well back home?
Um, it's hard to say. Japan. I mean, Japan was really clean. The people there are very nice. I didn't spend a lot of time with the Japanese military per se. Trying to think of like Singapore. A lot of what we were doing was like training in the jungle and shit. I didn't get a lot of time with like culture and spending time with like their people so much. I spent a lot of time with the Thai military, the Thai Marines. Those guys were great. They taught us a lot of like Muay Thai fighting and shit like that. But yeah, I can't really speak to like the cultures, unfortunately. Like I didn't, there wasn't like, we got like basic culture PowerPoint training before we went into a country, but I didn't spend a lot of time in the countries, like, really absorbing culture. We were like in the jungle training and shit like that.
I lived in Japan for 15 months, and it is incredibly clean. Someone pointed out, I don't think I even really acknowledged this, but there aren't any trash cans in the street in Japan. Like you don't eat or drink when you walk culturally, and you're responsible for your own trash. So another really interesting thing is that I saw, I don't know if this is all schools, but a lot of schools, the school children clean the school. So
Huh.
their whole philosophy on ownership and community is different. I thought that would be one to bring back here. Like
Oh
you,
yeah, that's
you make the kids,
powerful.
Yeah, make the kids clean their own school. See what happens to graffiti and trash and all the other things then.
Wow, I never even thought about that. That's a really good point.
So you had the Southeast Asia deployment. Where did you find yourself next?
So while I was on that deployment, because I was excelling with certain people, they offered me to do another deployment. I was going to go to the Black Sea for a little rotational deployment through there. Signed up for it, got selected. I came home from Southeast Asia, and I was home for like a week, and then I went to Texas to start the workup for the Black Sea. And then my dad had like a massive heart attack. He had to have open heart surgery, and he didn't have really anybody else to take care of him. So I stayed home from that deployment, helped him like rehab and like get back to health and shit like that. So I missed out on that one. And then right around that year, this is by 2012, my back started getting weird on me because I was like training really hard, trying to like be really strong. I trained for endurance. I was a machine gunner. It was when we were running through the jungles, like I excelled so much that these guys would like make me the RO because I could carry all the heavy shit and move and keep up with the platoon commander and move through the jungle and the hills and shit. And I thrived on that. I loved it. Like it felt really good. It gave me like a sense of worth and I was getting like high off the endorphins too. I loved to smoke myself. That's how I became like a PT stud. But my back started getting weird on me. And at first, like it just felt like, oh, my back's it's just weird. Like, maybe I pulled a muscle or something. And the first advice I got was from doctors that were like, oh yeah, here's some muscle relaxers. Just like take a few days off, lay in bed. And it got worse. It got so much fucking worse to where I couldn't walk. I was walking with a limp. I'd have crazy spasms and couldn't sleep and couldn't get out of bed. And I was like, oh shit, what am I gonna do? Like what's happening? And it got so bad that the Marine Corps was like, we can give you a new job or you can get out. And at that point I had a bad taste in my mouth. So I was like, I'm fucking out, dude. Cut me out. And my back was all weird. And that's kind of how I got into stand-up. When I got out, I realized that I couldn't work like physically laborious anymore. So I was like, I'm going to have to get into white collar shit. I'm going to have to learn to like talk to people and do like sales and stuff like that. But I was like, oh man, where can I go to like figure out how to like get comfortable talking in front of groups and shit in like a professional setting, or like talking to Marines is easy, military, but like I want to get better at like talking in front of people. And I took one of my notebooks that I was wrote shit in and I went to an open mic. And it was fucking, it changed everything for me. I didn't have like this, oh my God, I'm going to do comedy forever thing. Like, that's what I want to do. But I went up and like, it was like this crazy adrenaline rush. It was legal. It was free. I didn't get hurt. Nobody got hurt. And I was like, oh, I like doing this now. Like, this is cool.
With the back injury, I actually had a bad one when I was a firefighter, and same thing. Pills were thrown at me, and luckily I had the kind of background as a athlete and a coach. So I'm like, okay, this is bullshit. I did this lifting. This is not something that pharmaceuticals are going to fix. And so I went down the kind of Cairo PT road and ended up rehabbing it just with movement. But when you think about that, when the body is spasming, when the back is spasming, that's protecting whatever, connective tissue that you've damaged. So to throw drugs that just gets the protective mechanism to let go makes no sense whatsoever. You know what I mean? So it's crazy. And this is always, the workman's comp in the fire service, you get this. I got numerous friends that have got their backs fused now, and they can't do half the things I used to be able to do, versus taking the time, understanding it's going to be a painful, maddening road, but at the end of it, you're going to be stronger than you were before. But we got this fucking quick fix mentality in modern medicine where, the insurance companies or workman's comp don't want you to actually do it the right way. They just want to slice and dice and get you either retired or back to work.
Yeah, they start pumping you full of that medication because it's just the status quo. It's everybody's getting their check. The pharmaceutical companies are getting their money, and it does provide that immediate relief. They go, look, don't you feel better? Wow, look, that worked. This is incredible. Look, he's doing great. Look at all the pain he was in. Now he's not in pain. And yeah, it took, for mine specifically, it took like a few years before I finally had like control over my injury, and I was educated on what was going on. I was working while I was still living in Las Vegas in the Marines. I was doing private security, and somebody that I was working for noticed that I had been missing a lot of work, and he's like, "What's going on, man? Where you been?" And I was like, "My back, man. I can't come to work. I'm dealing with this shit." And he had a bad back, and he was a was a really wealthy guy, and he was like, "Oh man, I'll send you to my people." And I was like, "I can't afford that." He was like, "No, no, no, I got you." And for like a year, he sent me to a physical therapist and paid for me to go. And that physical therapist like changed my life, like really showed me and taught me a lot of shit and helped me understand like what was going on, and like, you know, explains like, yo, this is a long road. You're gonna have bad days for the rest of your life. That just is what it is. But you listen to your body, you do this rehab, you work on your body in the way that you're supposed to, and you'll have more good days than bad days, and you'll understand what's happening when it happens. You'll know these signs and things like that. And just like really, man, just helped me so much. And I'm so grateful to those people that like really help take care of me and give me that opportunity to recover. Holy shit. Because it's so scary to not be able to take care of yourself, you know, and to not understand what was going on. Like when at that time in my life and in the Marine Corps, like there was no fucking, like nobody was like, hey, also recovery, rest, you know. It was like go, 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 you know, pain is weakness leaving the body. And I thrived on all that shit. But when you're 17 and 18, like you don't realize that you're burning a candle. And by the time I was 23, I almost couldn't fucking walk.
Yeah, there's a thing called foundation training that I use out of California. It was a chiropractor that developed it after completely fucking up his own back. You know, he was partly through school. He's like, how can I have back surgery and then walk around saying that chiropractic is the answer? So he figured out this kind of movement practice, and it looks a bit like yoga, but it's not at all. You're holding these positions, but you're lengthening the muscle whilst using your body to add weight to that length. It was game changing. That was hands down the thing that really made the big difference. And now at 51 years old, I move weight the same weight I did in my 20s after this injury. So the healing power of the body is incredible when you get the right movement practices and you know, nutrition, all those things are behind it. The body will heal itself, and it doesn't mean that that injury isn't there, but you protect it with the strength and the length that you need to keep moving.
Yeah.
When a lot of people talk about transitioning from the military, and especially again, if you had that cohesion with certain people that you worked alongside, you know, you've got that purpose, you've got that tribe, you've got that identity, and now you don't again. Now you're in the grocery store and no one gives a shit what you used to do. Was that jarring for you, or did you transition out pretty seamlessly?
Well, you know, being in the reserves, I still got like this connection to the civilian world where it wasn't extremely difficult for me. But because I was so like spun up in my head about wanting to be like, but from my childhood as well, like craving like a structure and like a level of like success or just like financial security. I was always like craving trying to be better and to grow. And then the Marine Corps fosters that shit and like, yeah, you know yourself, seek self improvement. Like, you know, you want to be great, you want to be better, you want to be stronger. And being in the civilian world, like, it's not that that shit's frowned upon. You can excel, absolutely. But the transition out of like, all right, I'm done with the Marine Corps. My back's fucked up. What do I do now? I definitely like sunk myself into like trying to find work that was fulfilling, and sales was like this way to make money. But what ended up happening is, you know, I did some sales in Vegas, I did some sales in Chicago, and then I went to NorCal. I got talked into going out there and doing like solar. They were like, the money was looking real good. I was like, all right, I'll go. And I didn't have a place to stay, so I like lived in my car. When I got there, they were like, oh, we don't have any leads for you. You have to go create your own leads. I was like, okay, how does that work? They're like, you're gonna go door knock. And I was like, all right, I'll give it a shit. Let's go. So I'm like door knocking for like a month, living in my car, and nobody's letting me in their house because I got a fucking scar on my face or whatever. I'm just not good at it. And I'm sitting in my front seat one day and I'm like, damn, dude, I know how to work really hard. Like, I'm out here living in my front seat, you know, I should do something I like to do. And I came home and just started doing stand up as much as I could. I was like, I'm going to sink all of this like drive to be great and to like grow and sacrifice. I'm going to push this into stand up. And for like 2 years, I just like grinded in Vegas, all the bar rooms I could do, all the like shitty shows, anything I could get on, just trying to get better and writing and cutting my teeth and getting up in front of these crowds and figuring it out. And then I started coming to LA like once a week because I started taking classes in LA. I was taking like improv classes, writing classes. I was helping somebody produce a weekly show. And after like a year of that, I was sitting at the Comedy Store in the back of the original room, and I was like watching these comics work these crowds, these late night crowds, these crowds that have been sitting there for 4 hours. They've heard all the jokes, they've heard all the premises, they're drunk, they're foreign, they're tired. And to watch these comics still get them and whip them into like just get like crack them. I was like, oh, if I want to get better, I have to move here. Like that's what has to happen. I have to move to LA. And I moved out in like 2017, and that was like a transitionary period of my life, because when I came to LA to grow as a comic, I wasn't getting the stage time I wanted. I was new. I sucked. It was rough around the edges. I'm this barroom comic. I'm a Marine. People think I'm some dickhead Republican or something like that. So I was not welcomed at all. And I had this moment where I was like, oh shit, what do I do? Like, I came out here to develop. Who is my crowd? This LA crowd doesn't really enjoy me. What do I do? And so I realized all my buddies in the Marine Corps were the ones that had like always told me like, yo, dude, you should do comedy. Like you should be a comic. So I sent 400 letters out to Marine Corps units being like, hey, I'm a Marine. I'm a comedian. I'll come perform for you guys anytime, any place. And I got the first show, Cinco de Mayo, 2018. I went alone. I didn't bring any comics because now I bring a bunch of comics with me. But I ended up doing 45 minutes for 250 Marines, and they treated me like I was fucking Dave Chappelle, man. And I had this aha moment where I was like, oh, this is my crowd. This is what I want to do. This is what I'm supposed to be doing. Like these guys, these are the greatest crowds in the world. This is incredible. And that's where I started this tour. I started Rapid Fire as a way to just be like, listen, I want to do shows for the military. I'll come out anywhere for you guys, anytime, any place. I have all the gear now. I don't even need power. I can set everything up on my own and put these shows on. And that was like the real transition, was like getting into stand-up and finding my way back to the military.
When I was in university in London, I used to go to the Comedy Store there all the time on my own. I just love comedy, and you'd have nights where obviously they would be pretty good, but there was occasionally times where a bunch of comics not only were individually were amazing, but then they'd get together at the end of the night and bounce off each other. And I couldn't even freaking move my abs the next morning. I was so freaking tired from laughing my ass off for hours on end. But comedy is a strange landscape because, it's literally down to the taste of the individual. And I totally understand why, finding the right audience is right. With your specific style, how did you start figuring out what your comedy would even look like in the first place?
Well, I think it was a lot of like, trying to find my voice, trying to be aware enough to be like, all right, what vibe am I giving off? Like, who am I like? Who am I modeling myself after? And a lot of the stuff I was modeling myself after, in the beginning, you're just doing an impression of a comedian, right? And I was like looking to like guys like Jesselnick, who had this like dark style, this very written style, this very set up punch stuff. And I was looking to guys who had like that late night, chaotic, ramblings, rants and monologues of like just crazy shit, whether it's stories or just opinions on these taboo subjects. And those guys like Dave Attell and Jim Norton and just like crazy wild comedy. And as I looked at those guys as like, oh, they're doing crazy shit, I can do crazy shit, I started to find less of myself modeling after them and more being comfortable just talking about the things that I enjoyed talking about. And it took me a long time to like find my voice or stop trying to be what I thought everybody needed me to be, and got comfortable enough in my skills and my own talent to just be like, no, I got this. I just need to like let it flow freely and not be so worried or overthinking it or trying to make it something that is like these other things that are great. It's like you don't have to make it like these other great things. You just have to be comfortable enough and confident enough and love what you're doing enough to just do it and do it again and again and again and again and again, and finding it and being obsessed with the work and loving the process that I do, and finding the beats, finding the comedy, finding the humor in these things that are, whether they're off limits or they're right on the line or they're just taboo or whatever, and that is how I kind of like found this place that I belong without like coming off as like hacky or, you know, doing an impression of some other comic.
How did you deal along the way with the nights where it just wasn't gelling with that audience?
Um, you just look at it as a drop in the bucket, you know. That's another thing, because I'm so hungry for knowledge, you know, and I'm so, there's not a lot of mentors in stand up. Unfortunately, this is a very lonely game. There's not a lot of people putting their hand out going, come on, get up here, let me help you out. There are people who do it, and there it happens, but it's like it's very rare. So you're doing a lot of self-educating. You're doing a lot of your own research, your own schooling, your own classes. Like you really have to you really have to do everything yourself. And when you have that mindset of like, all right, I want to get better. When you have a bad night, it's less of like, fuck, oh man, this is bad. And then, not that I didn't have those nights where I go, oh my God, what am I doing? Like, am I even a comic? Should I just quit now? Like, you have those nights, but it doesn't last for very long, because the hunger and the want to grow kind of kicks in, and you realize, you know, from this, all the knowledge I'm picking up, you know, I even got it on my wall, and it's basically like, you know, if you're not like bombing, if you're not eating shit, you're not trying. Now, you don't want to bomb all the time. You got to have some self-awareness, be like, okay, like, know when a piece doesn't work, you know, or when it was you, have the self-awareness, know that when you fucked up. But also, like, you swing that bat, like, you gotta be willing to swing it and miss in order to like try and hit the fucking home runs. And when you miss and it hurts and it sucks and you're embarrassed and it's uncomfortable, you get better over time and just chalking it up as it goes, yeah, that was just another swing, you know. I saw the ball pass over the bat, at least, you know. I saw that I was too low or I was too high or I swung too soon. You know, you're so obsessed with the work that you pick up on the mistakes, and you feel less like I fucked up and more of like, no, I just learned. I just figured something out. It becomes a lot of that.
How empowering has it become forging your own path? I left the fire service, never even thought I was going to leave the fire service, but the same kind of, you know, similar thing. I had some incredible departments I was a part of, and then certainly the last one, the opposite, where it was, you know, very detrimental, the culture there. So I decided to step outside and change it from the outside, the whole profession. But what I realized is, you know, when you do that, I wake up and I'm already thinking about what I'm doing that day. I'm thinking about it till late at night, you know, still trying to be present with my family. I do know how to put things away for a while, but that is a passion. It's not a job, air quotes. And I get to forge, you know, anything that I want to do, you know, and I get to trim off the fat. There's no have your guy called my guy. Like, we are going to have a conversation. You want to do an interview? Yeah. Okay. Well, let's do it this time. Boom. Done. And I find that so empowering that, you know, that you can, despite what people tell you, how terrifying it is and how unstable it is, and what about benefits and all this other stuff, how if you believe in a project and you have the courage to just go for it, yes, it's incredibly hard, but man, it feels amazing waking up and knowing that you don't work for anyone. Like, you got to create your entire universe.
Yeah, it's empowering, you know. You have like complete control, but it also all falls on your shoulders, you know. Neil Brennan is a stand-up comic, really good comic. He's one of the co-creators of the Chappelle Show. When I was working at the Hollywood Improv as a door guy, I asked him in the hallway one night. I was just having, you know, a rough night, rough week, and I was like, "Yo, man, like, do I have to do everything myself in this game? Like, is it ever gonna like, does it ever get easier? Does it get better?" And he said, he looked at me, he goes, "It never gets easier. You only get better, and you have to do everything yourself." And it's like a heavy weight, you know. You don't. There's not a lot of breaks, you know. And any break you get, you make for yourself. You really, like, some people certainly get lucky. There is luck, and you got to be able to see that shit when it comes and jump on it, you know when luck is in your face, and grip on that shit. But for the most part, it is all on you, and it is empowering, especially as someone who has like a crazy amount of work ethic, because when it's not all on you and it kind of falls on other people, like a team thing, it can be difficult to rely on others and to expect the same level of commitment or work ethic from other people. So that is like kind of a pro to it. It all falls on you, so you're in control, so you don't have to rely on anybody. And it does like empower you to make the moves and make the decisions, be decisive, get out there and make mistakes and put your best foot forward and meet people and go out there. But also it can be stressful, it can be daunting, because when you've done everything you can, when you've spent all the time writing and you've showcased at the clubs and you've sent the emails out and you've networked and you've been social with people and you've like really like done everything that you're supposed to be doing, and then you still have there's no work, there's no stage time or something. It fucks your head up, because you're like, okay, I can only focus on the things that I can control, but everything I control, I did. I checked all the boxes. I went through. I'm doing all of it, and right now there's nothing coming from it, and you're just like, fuck, am I a failure? Am I doing it wrong? Did I make a mistake? You have no one to look at but yourself, and it can be very, it can be intense. It can be a lot on your psyche, and it can be difficult to like slow yourself down enough to be patient with the process. Because even if you do go through and dot all the I's and cross all the T's and do everything you're supposed to do, don't matter. Timing still has a lot to do with stuff. There's an order to things in the world, even if it all feels like chaos. There's people ahead of you. There's people in line ahead of you. There's other shit going on in other people's lives, and the world doesn't fucking revolve around you. It doesn't matter how hard you work. And sometimes you just gotta fucking sit and take a beat and let everything catch up with you. I'm a fast moving person. I move through the world very quickly, and I'm hungry, so that makes you a little impatient, and you can end up fucking your head up and feeling overwhelmed by your results and lack of. So it does empower you, but it can lead you over an edge that you don't even realize you're coming upon, because of you're so hungry for it that you don't realize that you're working yourself into like an unhealthy place, because things, even if you're going 100 miles an hour, the world doesn't.
100%. There's a book, The War of Art by Stephen Pressfield, and he talks about the resistance. Like when you care so much about something and you put all all this work into it, when you're almost there is when you get the most resistance. It's a kind of universal thing, and it's so true. And that's when I think a lot of people give up, because they push, and nothing's happening. And it's kind of like that cartoon, if you've ever seen on social media, where the guy's digging towards the gold and he stops, 2 feet from when he gets to the gold. It's that. And I agree with you completely. We tell ourselves a story that I do A, B, and C, and that should result in D. But just because you told yourself the story doesn't mean that's the way it's going to happen. And maybe it doesn't happen because it leads to something even more amazing that never would have occurred had it gone the way you thought it was going to go. But that self-belief that what you are doing is the right thing and you're on the right path, and just being able to endure that suffering, because it is. I mean, I'm the only person. I get all these emails, hey, Behind the Shield team, like team, it's just me for everything. So I totally understand what you're saying, but I think that's the thing, is when you are in the middle of this resistance, just know that on the other side, when you get there, will be that thing that you're waiting for. You just got to believe in it.
Yeah. And make peace with the idea that, not that like that's where it's going and it's inevitable that, it won't work out and that just is what it is. But you have to make peace with the fact that like things don't turn out the way you want them to. And you can plan and have a goal and a mission. And it's good to have all that, because you head in that direction. You're even though it's all like this, you're still moving that way. But it's like, you can't you can't hang your hat on a lot of shit, especially, nowadays in the world like this. We are living in a very unstable world. I think things are better for a lot of people than they've ever been. I think there's a lot of great systems in place helping a lot of people. I think there's more access to a lot of things than we've ever had, and we are on the up and up overall. But goddamn, the instability in the world and in the economy and people and social environments and politics, it's just like, I mean, you better not put all your eggs in any one basket. And if you do, just be be prepared for when that fucking basket breaks. And you actually said it really good. Is like, just because you're working towards A doesn't mean you're going to get A, and not necessarily like A is the highest value, but like B might come walking through the door and you never expected that. You go, oh fuck, that's for me. I could do that. Yeah, I didn't. You don't know what the outcome 100% is going to be. Like, you just fucking beat the bushes so hard that things start coming out of it. You go, oh fuck yeah, that sure that. Even though you think this is, oh, I want this and this is what I'm going to get. You got to be open to like, you know opportunity and luck in all the forms that it comes in. And you'll be surprised. Like, you'll be surprised when it all starts coming out. It doesn't happen the way you think it's going to happen, and you can't bet on that, on like it's all going to happen that way, because that's just not how it fucking works.
You used the phrase earlier, manufactured stress, when you talk about the Marines, and I could relate to that too, because some of the chaos in my early life, I remember the fire service, fire academy, boot camp style training. It just used to make me smile. Like, I knew it was a game. It just wasn't stressful to me compared to, what I'd lived up to that point. But obviously I towed the line. I, did everything I had to do above and beyond, but I always knew in the back of my mind that, all this shouting and screaming was just pantomime. But when you look at what's going on today, it's the sad use of that word, because it is manufactured stress. Realistically, a lot of the shit that people are arguing with, fighting over, worried about is just manufactured. The boogeyman that's going to get you, that you're told is your enemy because you're the different religion or political party or, insert label here. And it's so sad, because we are so fortunate as a nation. As you said, we live probably more comfortably than any culture around the world up to this point. And yet we've got this manufactured division that's creating so much mental ill health and stress.
Yeah. It sucks. It taxes me. It's part of the anxiety that I feel every day. I'm just like, I'm good. I'm working and things are good. But it's like, in the background, you're just like, what the fuck is happening? Like, what is that noise that just keeps getting louder and louder and louder? And it's that noise. I mean, I can't help, but I'm not a conspiracy theorist and all that bullshit, but I can't help but look at it and go, this shit is on purpose. Like, this is very much like someone is turning the fucking dial up on us. And it's, if I think about it too much, it it upsets me. And that's why I can't get into politics and all that shit. 'Cause it's very upsetting. It's very, very upsetting, man. Which is, why I just decided to kind of do, because part of the reason I just like lean so heavy into comedy. It's like, I can't spend too much time thinking about all the problems in the world and shit. You try to act locally, take care of the people near you and next to you, your family and your friends, and be good to the people near you. Be good to people. Be good to the people you see every day and the people you come in contact with. All that other shit, man. I don't have the bandwidth for it. I'll go crazy. I do not. I cannot. I just can't. It'll turn me into someone that I don't want to be.
Well, I think when we all have a realization universally that it is a deliberate division by whatever is above the two puppet strings that are those two political parties at this point. George Carlin, how many comedians have been telling us this for decades? I was going to say decorations, that's the wrong word. For decades now, the same message, like, just take a step back and look at the bigger picture. And they're so true. And all of a sudden you realize that you're actually standing together, not against each other anymore. So, I had a neuroscientist on yesterday, and I asked him, like, talk to me about the psychology behind creating stress and what that does for the ability to critically think about things. And he said it's a complete direct correlation. The more stressed and underslept people are, the less they can critically think. And so if you are divided and stressed, then you're not going to question how these people get into power in the first place of both sides, and how many of their friends are making billions while our soldiers are going to war, or whatever the thing is. So, and there's no question that it's deliberate. And I think the way that we fight that as a nation is to take a step back, not look at the sides that you're told that you are part of, but look at the shared humanity that you're definitely a part of.
Yeah, yeah, we have much more in common than we have in different. You know,
100%.
that kind of bringing it back home here. I think that's one thing that I have found in LA, and with this, these shows I'm doing for the military and first responders is when I first started doing these shows, I was like, I was just trying to get stage time. That's all it was. And it really turned into this thing where I realized that I was bringing value to these young men and service women. And I realized, like, even though I was pissed off at the Marine Corps, when I got out, I realized that, like, I'm still a Marine and I still love Marines, and I have so much in common. My comedy and all that is so much in common with these young guys. And then also I start bringing these other comedians with me, and I watch two things happen. I watch these comedians get to have these incredible experiences with these awesome crowds and develop themselves as comics in front of these crowds. And then I watch these crowds, these guys who are, a lot of these, they're young Marines. And I ask at the top of the show, I go, who's been to a comedy club? Who's seen like a live stand-up show? And 99% of them have not. So I'm exposing these guys to this for the first time. And I get to watch them take it in, and I bring all kinds of comics. I bring people from all different walks of life. And I'm watching these young men and service women from whatever background and demographic they come from have these moments where they go, oh shit, I didn't think like this person could make me laugh, or that I could laugh about these things with this type of person, or this person would even talk about these things and make fun of it. And it becomes this thing where you're like, people have this, oh, we're not so fucking different after all. We are more alike than we are different. And it's so powerful because, again, like, it was just about stage time. And then it became like, these guys are having like, it's hard to fucking go through some of the shit you go through in the military, whether your unit's bad or not. These guys are like in these shitty situations for extended periods, whether it's manufactured or not. And then we come out and do these shows, and these guys are like, oh my God, man, like, we needed this. This was incredible. And then it took me a while to see this, but like realizing the impact socially and culturally that I'm having on these young guys, because I'm bringing these different comics out, and these guys are experiencing culture in this art form that they just would not have experienced otherwise. And this is their first experience for it. And really, like, bridging this gap between different types of people and doing it through comedy and humor, and making people feel closer in a way, instead of like the other, oh, that person, those people are like that, and getting to like identify with somebody, go, holy shit, like, that's actually a thought that I have.
I've always said this, the fire service is such a great profession to really observe exactly what you're talking about. Because if we're in all our gear and we're masked up and we're in a smoky room, the only prejudice that has value is the firefighter that can do their job and the firefighter that can't do their job. And it's evident on the fire ground. Their religion, sexual orientation, pigmentation, whatever it is irrelevant. You can't see it. All you can see is, can they or can't they? And I love that, because that's what it's all about. And I think comedy does that too. I love South Park, for example. If you make fun of everyone, then all of a sudden they're holding a mirror to all of our ridiculousness, and it's not coming from one side. Like, they're making fun of themselves and everyone else around. And I think that in the fire service, we use dark humor to offset the horrible shit that we see. So there's so much value in comedy, especially when you've got a group of men and women that are from all these backgrounds. Their shared humanity is they're all Marines, and they've all signed up to potentially die protecting their country, or protecting indigenous people in another country. So I think that comedy is such a great vehicle for delivering a lot of this shared humanity again.
Yeah. No, it really is. There's, they call it dark forces. There's forces at work trying to make that shit hard too. Like the politics finds its way into everything, and it makes that art form, it makes this art form a little tricky sometimes in certain rooms and shit like that. But I feel like for the most part, that's one thing that's really great about comedy. These when you get these crowds that can come and sit down for a couple hours one night, have a few beers, and realize like, all right, I'm here to listen to people talk about the world, and some of it I may not find funny, but I can see the humor in it, and I can appreciate the work that is being done to express these ideas, and people give you, you know, at the comedy clubs, people give you a lot of room to be wrong and be vulnerable and express a thought, and you have all that room because you're a comic. This isn't the fucking HOA meeting. This isn't the, where I'm not running for office. I'm up here to like tell you funny stuff, and if you just like set all that shit that we're all dealing with aside, because that's what you're here for. You're here to let loose and be at a comedy club, then you can have a good time. And it turns out to be this really beautiful thing when people can get into that headspace. Like, yeah, I'm here for comedy, man. I just want to listen to people try and be funny.
One of the most ironic conversations I heard, Robert Downey Jr. was on Joe Rogan's podcast probably a couple of years ago now, and they were talking about his role in Tropic Thunder, where he had the blackface. And they were saying you couldn't make that film today. And I remember thinking, well, how sad is that statement? The whole point of his character is to show how racist Hollywood used to be. And you're saying that that's censored now. So you're censoring the very voice that you're supposed to be having to advocate, like to talk about the ridiculousness of prejudice and racism. So that's, when you have that censorship where it actually stops people having healthy conversations, that pendulum has gone way too far by that point.
Yeah, they're trying to get rid of nuance, and it's like you can't do that, because then they're not even trying to get rid of nuance. They get rid of the nuance they don't like, and it just becomes one sided. It's like, oh, it's not okay for us, but when it's okay for you, then it's okay. Blah blah blah.
Well, let's talk about the Rapid Fire Comedy Tour then. You've kind of walked us through your journey of comedy. You've talked about bringing on these other comedians. Talk to me now about the tour and which groups that you're presenting in front of.
So right now, this year, my main goal is to just spread the word about the tour. A lot of people don't know about us. I turned it into a 501c3 a few years ago because, it was never about like trying to make a bunch of money, and it's hard to get money from the military to do these shows. It's really hard to find funding and get them to like fork it over, and it's a whole thing. So I was like, oh, I'll turn it into a nonprofit, and then we can find sponsors and donors that way, which we got approved to be a nonprofit right when the country shut down for COVID. So it's a terrible time to launch. But a lot of people just don't know about us. And that's why I'm doing this podcast, trying to let people know, like, hey, this is, I produce live comedy shows for the military in the field, in the dark, in the dirt, anytime, any place. And a lot of the shows are free because they can't organize with their leadership to get money together. As of late, this last year or so, I've been getting better about trying to get units to work with budgeting and shit. There's been some money coming in from them, but it's very rare. So I'm looking for people to like come, visit it and check out our website and donate to us, or companies and people that just want to sponsor it and partner with the brand. They see what we're doing. Go, oh, that's awesome. I like that. My brand does cool stuff like that. I would love to like collaborate with you. But that's even like secondary. The main thing, the primary, step one, chapter one, verse one, is I'd like to have more shows. And I've expanded our reach to not just military, but first responders, because the first responder community is filled with a very similar person. A lot of people get out of the military, become first responders. And it's a similar work. It's that work of serving others and doing it in these high stakes environments that put a lot of pressure on you. And there's a demand to deal and cope and navigate heavy things. And when that shit's over, you need a release. You need that all right, let's come together and like have some good vibes too. Let's reset all this shit. That You don't have to be in a firefight to need to decompress. You could come out of a burning building. You could save someone's life. You could just be on high alert for days and days and days on end and never get that time to like have a release. So I really want to be able to offer this to the first responders as well. So that's the main step, is like letting people know that I want to put on a show. I want to do a comedy show for you, whether it's a company party or an annual party, or you celebrating something. I'll come out, put on a show. I have all the gear, even if you have a venue, it's simpler. Some venues have some setup, but I have all the stuff. I can come out and do it. I'm not trying to get rich, just transportation and boarding covered. And then, some money to help pay my bills is kind of the future goal I'm working at here, trying to build a career out of this and actually be able to do it full time. But I want people to go visit the website, check us out, see what we've done. It took me a couple of years, but I finally have a nice website that really lays it all out. And that if you go to rapidfirecomedytour.org, you can see, letters of recommendation from previous units that we've done. You can watch some videos of post-show interviews with people that are talking about what the show was like. You can see a lot of like what the shows are like. And yeah, man, just check us out. And if you like stand-up comedy and you have an event coming up, I'd love to come out and, perform for you and maybe even bring some comedians with me, depending on where you're at and what the budget is.
Brilliant. Well, I know that you're short of time now, so I want to thank you so much for being so generous with your time and coming on the Behind the Shield podcast today.
Thank you, James. I really appreciate the platform, man.